And then we've gone over this, but this really struck the FedTech committee, is that Zillow is 100% rolling this out. So we also saw that there's an MLS that's rolling out on blockchain. This is someone very well known in the industry, and there's a lot of conflict that's happening between organized real estate and disruptors who just don't want to see organized real estate really exist.
But we are live. So as I was just mentioning off air, if you're here today, you're either likely not a huge soccer fan like I am, or you're multitasking like I am. So luckily, I brought, of course, my good friends Teresa and Sheila on from Consortia. You already know what this is going to be about, except this one's going to be a continuation of what we've always been talking about, as you know, if you paid attention, this has evolved dramatically since we started doing this in June. And today, they're going to talk about what they just recently presented to the FedTech Committee for NAR. They just did this recently. It's kind of a year in review, which is going over everything that they put into blockchain and all of the laws. This is a great way to head into Thanksgiving. So without further ado, ladies, take it away.
You're awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us. Good to be here with Ms. Sheila Fageron. So we just presented, of course, we know NAR annual just happened about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, and Sheila and I were asked to address the Federal Technology Committee. And at that meeting, we presented all of the updates that happened in the world of blockchain. So I like to say that the presenting there last year, which last year was my second time presenting, this time was our first time Consortia has addressed this committee, is that they forced us to really take fingers to keyboard, pen to paper, and write down all of the rules that touch real estate and blockchain and Web3. So I have a lot of gratitude here on this call to thank Ms. Sheila, to thank Jeff, for everyone who's really had us focus over the last year to say, okay, what does this mean? What is this sober moment in blockchain really look like? And how are we transforming the real estate industry with this technology? And I will hand it off to Ms. Sheila Fageron, who, because of our work last year at the FedTech Committee, Sheila found Consortia. And Sheila was like, I got to know these rules. And that's it. I'm really so grateful. Like, when I give, I get way more than I give. And that's what happened since the last year of presenting. So happy to have Sheila as part of the Consortia team, which was really the output of last year's presentation.
Thank you, Teresa. So I think Teresa and I had this really long discussion today about who we are and really what Consortia does. And I think over the months that we've met with you, Jeff, and kind of made presentations to the group, a lot of people come back and say, well, you guys are all over the place. You're doing so much stuff. So we want to dial in to make sure people really understand that Consortia is building the global ledger on blockchain for real estate. So if you want to just kind of say who we are, CARFAX for homes is the easiest description, because when you look at CARFAX, it's a history of all of the data points, timestamps, the dates of exactly when those services or that thing in history happened on that car. That's what we're doing with real estate. And there are lots of pieces of this, and we don't want to confuse people. We don't want people to think that we're selling different products and all this other stuff, because we're going to show you different companies we're partnered with, but we want to be very clear what Consortia is the ledger, the blockchain for data storage for all assets. That's who we are. That's what we're doing. And we have slides that show lots of companies are involved in this. Lots of companies. The next slide shows different companies that are already either patent pending, live products, functioning in the blockchain space. We have lots of companies, countries, and states asking us to do other things with blockchain besides real estate. That's why we want to have a very clear picture. These are all different companies that are currently working with Consortia. And when I say that these are partners with us, I want you to understand that means these companies have made a decision to build or layer or add their data onto the Consortia blockchain. Consortia is just the ledger, the blockchain, the plumbing, as Teresa calls it, or foundation of the data. And so I want you to think about this, the data from these different companies being stacked on top of us or implemented or added to Consortia. So Teresa's going to run through some slides here that show you what a live sample of her wallet looks like. And
I want to ask a question first.
Yeah.
I've never asked you guys before.
Sure.
Go back to those companies, either actually the slide prior to that. Can you give an example of how, and you've mentioned this before, so if you missed, I think it was the last one where we were talking about how the state of Florida is working with you guys, but let's give a different one. Give an example, because maybe this will help the audience understand, like how is Budweiser or Walmart or any of these platforms, give an example of how they would be using blockchain. I think we understand it for real estate as being a ledger, but how is another industry using it?
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a can of beer. This is a can of Monster. I'm not day drinking at 11 in the morning. Let's just go over this. So here's
my
a can.
mouth just watered. I'm just going to throw it out there.
I don't know how you watch soccer or any kind of game without drinking a beer, but that's, we'll keep it clean. All right. So you've got this can, and this might be manufactured in, I don't know, name a plant in state A. And it's got to get to the distribution point, right? The distributor hub, and then it's got to go to stores. So you want to make sure you have like ABC laws, right? Alcohol, the alcohol tobacco group, right? And they have to make sure that this can is a legal can. It met certain standards. It only went to licensed distributors and then to licensed stores for resale. So every time this can moves to a different handler, so it goes from place A to place B, that gets logged on as a journal entry in a ledger. So that's how they're using it for supply chain logistics, for managing inventory from point A to point B.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think that's kind of similar for real estate too, because you've got a piece of property and the piece of property doesn't move, but things touch on the property. Sorry, I interrupted you, Sheila. Sorry.
No, I love that example, Teresa. And so like she's saying, the can, it's storing the ledger of that batch. And then it also, being on the blockchain, it is based on your data sharing or your permissions of your blockchain. It could be on a ledger that only those distributors can see. And they can see SKU numbers, or they can see the data about that batch, or when that batch was done, or when that batch is not going to be good anymore. And no different than the data that's going to be stored about real estate is, let's say somebody owned a home that had a flood. And so the information about that flood is going to be stored on blockchain. So when it resells in 5 years, whoever's buying that information about that asset's going to know the past things that have happened to that property that maybe they don't have. Because the truth is, once I've fixed a property, I don't have to disclose that currently. So the goal is to get to the point where past things that have happened to the property are disclosed and are transparent, because maybe you as a buyer wouldn't buy that property if you knew that it had had a flood at some point. Or maybe there's information that would make the decision of whether that investment group buys that tranche of properties, that they don't have access to that data right now. And I know it's kind of confusing right now to people, because we've been used to operating in the shadows in some ways in real estate, especially in commercial, where things are not shared, things are not disclosed, things are not made privy to everybody in the process. But if you think from a functional asset class, is that really best for us? Is it best for you if you're in capital markets or secondary markets and you're buying $1 billion of properties and you don't know what's going on with those properties or what they look like, except for the last appraisal that was done? Is that best for you as an investor to make that decision about those assets? And so ultimately, when we get to the point when things are more transparent and the data is available, you as an investor or those groups of companies as investors will be able to make better decisions.
And I'll say one more thing to this too, just because, I feel like I'm a voice of the people as it relates to this, because it is challenging to understand. And it does feel like it's all over the place, which it's not. What it is evolving fast. And so the thing I will say is, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, is that, and the reason I asked the question was because like, this is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so for any of you paying attention to this, those of you that are here live, thank you for being here. Thank yourself for being here. And then also those of you watching the recording, is that understanding that you embracing just feeding your knowledge to understanding this stuff, because it is a matter of when it's coming. And so you having an understanding and being able to articulate and talk the talk, rather than being the person who doesn't accept it until it's already here. You're gonna create such an advantage for your business, for one of the pillars of your business, which is your expertise. And so this is incredibly important to continue to follow along and continue to understand, because all of a sudden, one of these days, we're going to jump on here and we're going to be like, hey guys, this is live, this is happening, this is real, this is an example. And all of a sudden you're going to snap your fingers and it's going to be so far along, you're going to have already missed tons of opportunity. So I'm going to go back to mute and let you guys keep talking.
You're amazing. I love that you're a voice to the people. I want to say something here. I forgot to say, I think I thought of it, is if Budweiser can show their ledger to Walmart, then Walmart's like, yeah, I want to sell your inventory. Or what if Walmart says, I have to see your ledger, show me the provenance of this can of beer, and it's for consumer protection, right? Was this can of, or was it really made here stateside? And you got to have trusted parties who can write to that ledger. So think of it that way. Consortia is no different, right? Only trusted partners from this list, and this list is growing, can write to the blockchain, can share information with the people who need to see it, who are the banks and the lenders and the capital markets.
And Teresa, so I want you to talk real quick, because you've mentioned this before. I don't remember if you've mentioned it on one of these, about just all the illegal things people do with selling properties. I think you mentioned something about you had gotten some leads or whatever, but let's talk about, the consumer protection, because I think of it from every aspect. We were talking to people this weekend about the medical business, and you're talking about the beer business, and just think about all the bad actors that are not going to be able to sell their wares or get over on people or take advantage of people with blockchain. Because if you have that provenance and that protection and that trusted source that you know where it's coming from, then you're not worried about getting a bad batch of beer or a bad batch of meds or a bad whatever. Can you kind of talk about that, Teresa?
Yeah, such a good point. Sheila always remembers the fine details of life, and I love it. So I got these internet leads. Well, that's funny, right? Like internet leads, who loves those? That's like the bread and butter of everything that we do in our lives, right? And it was somebody from who had their properties listed on LoopNet, and it's for sale by owner, which you can very easily do, commercial properties, land. And they wrote to me and they said, we'd like you to represent us. We found your information on the internet, and I just closed a land deal. So that's probably how they found me, right? And they said, we'd like to sell through you. And I'm like, how'd you get my phone number? They're like, just through a friend, through an investor network. I was like, okay. And they said that they owned these two parcel. It was actually two separate spammers who had contacted me, each saying that they owned a piece of land. And they said, I have the buyer all lined up. And I was like, that's like a slam dunk, right? Like, I just need a broker to write my contract. And I do that from time to time for my clients. But then I was like, something doesn't smell right, because I got these two leads. They're so close to each other. They look so similar in nature. And it's, possible that investors, birds of a feather flock together. Could be like a group of investors found me, and my name was passed around, but I was like, I don't think so. So I checked with the title company that backs this project, the Consortia blockchain. They're the first title company to be on blockchain. And so they looked it up and they said, no, these are spam. This is spam. These aren't the real owners of these properties. And I would suspect that we're going to see a lot more of this land stealing and house stealing. And so when somebody comes to you and says, I want to sell this property, and our business is increasingly through internet leads, it's not like the old days. I was raised by my sister, who's 40 years older than me, who was in the business for 30 years. And she literally knew where everybody lived in the neighborhood. She knew every single owner of every house. That's not the world we live in anymore. We get these internet leads, right? So how do you know that somebody actually owns their house unless you're going to check the chain of title ahead of time, and that chain of title can be put onto blockchain in a central repository?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
No, I just want to make a point about that. And if you think about this, Jeff, from a practical standpoint, what Teresa's saying is, we need to talk more about the functionality of this, because it really is about transparency and protection and authenticity and, clear cooperation and all these things, and that blockchain can do for us as an industry and for people as individuals, that a lot of people don't think about. Think about all the people that get wire fraud, and the people who, I mean, just the crazy stuff going on in the world with what Teresa's talking about with scammers. And if you're doing it on blockchain and the transactions are going on a trusted, immutable ledger, then you're not going to have to worry about the things that we've all been having to worry about, especially over the last decade, right? So that was it. Just wanted Teresa to share that, because I think it's important for us to kind of not just talk about what we're doing, but really help with the functional and practical aspect for everybody about why this is important to operate this way.
So I'm kind of curious, as we talked to, as I mentioned in the kind of the monologue or the intro, was about this year in review and what you were presenting to this team at NAR.
Sure.
What are the questions they're asking? What are they most interested in? What is it that we should be paying attention to based on what they are most interested in?
Well, I think what was interesting as the difference between years past of presenting versus this year, it was more like this was presented in rapid fire format. It was more like a Senate hearing is how we felt. We were sitting down with microphones in front of us. And it was more like a testimonial of where the industry is. And it was less questioning what's happening. It was more like, yep, got it, understood. It was just, these slides just went through in rapid fire format. And they were like, wow, like, okay, this has gone a long way in such a short period of time since the last year. So the one question that came up was, well, I think there was a sense of urgency about this because it is moving so quickly. And one agent on the phone, one broker was like, how do I start doing this right now? And then coming out of the meeting, like, we have so much work lined up for us. We have actually for this process for the title recorders, we have the first county, and a very large county in this country. It's a huge county is coming online to put their records on blockchain. We have 50%, over 50% of the listings in this country are coming onto blockchain, coming out of NAR annual. So I think to your point, right? Like, you're going to wake up and it's just going to be here. That's kind of what happened as a result of this presentation. It kind of spread like wildfire, like, wow, this is here now.
Carry on. Tell us more.
So
okay.
The next set of slides, Teresa, we probably don't have to go through. It's just, these are things that are built on the blockchain that we've gone over in the past, which is the companies that we're partnered with to do the certified listings. We don't want people to be confused that these are companies that build on our blockchain. These are products available, and it's just more of an application to help you understand the type of data and the type of information that's going to be coming on board onto the blockchain on Consortia. And so we can scan through here, but really the point is this just helps you understand the kind of information that's coming on board that's being built onto the Consortia blockchain. And then we'll get to the fun stuff that Teresa, which she kind of blew everybody away when we get down to this next section.
Yep, for sure. So I think of all of that, right? Like the more information that's going on to blockchain, the more like we're seeing ancillary products being built out, like home warranty, brokers, E&O insurance, to reduce the cost of doing business for all kinds of businesses. So we're super thrilled about that, to be able to do that. So that's, and you guys have seen the certified listing process. I think it's going to be really interesting to see this in your MLS systems coming up in the near future, that you can order it there. And our partnerships directly into organized real estate. And then we've gone over this, but this really struck the FedTech committee, is that Zillow is 100% rolling this out. So we also saw that there's an MLS that's rolling out on blockchain. This is someone very well known in the industry. And there's a lot of conflict that's happening between organized real estate and disruptors who just don't want to see organized real estate really exist. So this has caused a lot of concern, I would say, in the industry. I guess without further ado, if we want to go into this part, the year in review, this is kind of fun. Okay, so last year I was in front of FedTech and I was like, guys, because they had asked me.
First, name the movie and put it in the chat. If you don't know this movie, you're off the team. Sorry, go on.
Absolutely. Yep. I think maybe some people are too young to even know this movie, right? We'll see. So this is a very famous movie from the 80s, right, guys? Is it 80s or 90s? 80s, right?
That was one of the I don't think this was the original. I think this was one of the future ones when Biff was when he was already rich or something. That was probably like 2 or 3, I'm not sure. Yes,
totally. So he gets his hands on this almanac and he's able to know what the sports scores are going to be. And then he makes a whole empire on betting, and he gets all the bets right. And so I feel like that's been the last year, because a year ago we had to present all the rules of blockchain and web. And at that point they were like, this is insane. Like everything that I was saying, they were like, there's no way that this is like going to come true. But everything came true that I presented. So let's go through this rapid fire. So on Valentine's Day, Blockfi received a $100 million penalty from the SEC. It was a very expensive holiday. The next one was Janet Yellen said that there would be a stablecoin, a crackdown on stablecoins and their validity. So as a result, we directly saw stablecoins starting to unwind in May 2020. Then we saw a more tangible fine hit Kim Kardashian because she was illegally and not properly disclosing that she was selling NFTs, that she was being compensated to sell these NFTs. So we went from this $100 million fine that seems kind of crazy. It's like way too esoteric, right? As a real estate practitioner. But now you could see that somebody who's a real estate broker who runs a shop, if they're promoting NFTs, that they could realistically get a $1 million fine. The next thing we saw is the SEC probing Yuga Labs. I always use the Bored Ape Monkey example when we're presenting. And they said that actually it's very likely that these are securities and these aren't art. It's already been well documented that this is a great place to launder money. And so that was an issue that the SEC is now cracking down on. Now, the last month has been incredibly busy. And here's where I really like to sink my teeth in and lean into this. So a year ago, I was saying, look, these coins, these cryptos are actual securities. And so the SEC said that library is a security. This went to court, a district court then upheld that the SEC has given enough laws to the public. There's enough precedence that says crypto is really a security. So everything that I said would happen, happened, right? And we even know that the SEC was reading our white paper. We had been advising into different branches, into the US government. So this is pretty cool to see that there's actual clarity on this. Now we see that the Financial Stability Board, so this is global. Now let's zoom out. This is the G20. These are the big countries, and then other huge economies. This includes global organizations. They say that there has to be crackdown and higher regulatory standards for crypto assets and stable coins. So right after this happens, we saw the White House also reiterate the same message. So one of our lobbyists had us join a call where there was White House bipartisan leadership. This is the advisory group to the US White House. And they said that the Federal Reserve will regulate crypto when there is systemic risk. You guys remember this clause coming out of 10 years ago, mortgage subprime, systemic risk. Once you get that kind of blanket terminology, then the Federal Reserve is able to say, crypto under our jurisdiction, and then they can do as they want. And we really did see that, didn't we, in the last week with the meltdown in crypto markets. So another thing that we've been saying is that I was
just going to ask you, Teresa, is that what they're talking about? Is like those big companies going bankrupt, which now could be just a domino effect of just a massive crash?
There is, I mean, this last one that we saw in the last week,
Which we're talking about FTX, right?
FTX. That one is huge. There are so many conspiracy theories. It's not even conspiracy when you look at like the chain of who's interrelated. There are many ideas of how, who, why, all of that's coming crashing down. And I'm not going to make an official statement on that because I'm nobody. Like, why would you take my advice other than everything that I've said has come true? But I feel like there's a lot of investigation. It's going to be massive investigation on this one.
I want your opinion.
As I hear from NAR, nothing is by accident. That's all I got to say. So,
dun, dun, dun.
Okay. So speaking of nothing by accident, I get to hear things from the family office world like years or months in advance, and was informed that the largest countries were creating their own fiat cryptocurrencies. Guess what? They rolled it out. They tested it at the end of October. And here's proof. This was out and published. So they're able to settle transactions in an average of about 15 seconds. So this is something that goes, it takes countries, right? Fiat, they have currency, and they're moving that onto, say, a digital dollar or a digital euro, right? And that's what they're able to exchange between the banks, the intermediaries. The other thing that we know is that FEDNOW is creating a new payment system. So I think we presented this on the last call. This is the next evolution of ACH. So it's instant. It's verifying people's assets in their banks. It's checking to see what kind of transactions people actually do. Is a standard according to someone's spending behavior or the kind of money that they bring into their account. And then they're able to minimize fraud because they're authenticating people's accounts. So this just goes right in line with fiat currency becoming crypto and having a really centralized system there. This is an example of how the FEDNOW process works. And we know that this is coming for real estate. This is in the white paper. They've asked us to weigh in and help on this, which is very cool, to work with the Federal Reserve, the Boston Federal Reserve. So we're going to be seeing transactions settle 24/7, 365. The idea is people can do their EMDs, their mortgage payments through this system. So pretty excited to see all of these things happen, some predictions, and see all of them come true. Questions?
Don't tease us with this slide and stop talking. Come on.
Okay, I just want to slow down and make sure that if anybody has any questions, to go for it. Sheila, do you want
if you have questions, put them in the chat. Just throw them in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll pass them along.
So when we first started meeting with you, Jeff, I think one of the things that Teresa had said, this was 8 months ago. She said, when the Fed coin, because that's what she was calling it back then, before it was announced. She said, when the Fed coin comes out overnight, all of American real estate will be on the blockchain. Well, what she just told you is they've announced it. They've not only announced it, but they've told us when they're releasing it, and they've told us when their pilot is, and they already have all the banks lined up because they have a list of banks that we were going through that are already partnered with them on it. So I would say, if you have not listened yet to everything that's been said on these meetings every month, now would be the time to be more particularly paying attention because of what Teresa just shared with you. So think about this. If the FEDNOW is the Fed coin, and if they overnight release this once their pilot's done and say, okay, you now have to go to the bank and cash in all of your fiat dollars to exchange it for a FEDNOW coin, or your bank's going to flip it all to FEDNOW digital currency, whatever's in your bank account. And then the central bank digital currency is now going to be the global currency that is going to move digital money around the world between the different current currencies. Think about what that means for us. Think about what that means for us functioning as agents, for us functioning in selling homes. Think about what Teresa and I talk about, and I hadn't thought about this until she brought it up. It's like, how are they going to roll this out? Think about all the people that are on government assistance, all the people that are on welfare, all the people that get Social Security. And if the Fed says overnight, well, guess what? We're no longer going to send you a check for dollars. We're going to give you this app that now has your digital asset FEDNOW money on it. And you will now take that app to Walmart or the grocery stores or whatever to pay for your stuff. It's going to force the retailers to accept it because such a large population of the world of America is on some kind of government assistance, a huge portion.
Mhm.
So she's not kidding when she's saying that it literally could be like a flip of a switch and the government says, yep, all homes get traded with digital assets now. It's not just not far off. It's like next spring, next summer. So we can't stress enough how important it is to start paying attention to everything Teresa's been teaching everybody, because this is not something that's 10 years from now. We're under a year. We're talking under a year. All of this is going to be changed.
And the thing is, though, and it's crazy, and I say this every time, is that, we were talking a lot about this last time, because my comment was, for those of you that didn't catch the last one, was that nobody's paying attention to this. There's just a handful of, 10 people on this webinar. There's maybe another, I don't know, 50 to 100 that might actually watch it and consume it. It's just reality of our attention spans nowadays. Nobody's taking this serious. And like I said, good luck getting the people with money in this world to actually embrace this and shift. But as they and Sheila just described, that's where they're smart. They're going to work from the bottom up, not from the top down. And it's going to force hands, and you're going to have no choice. So you make your own decision, embrace it before it comes, or wait till you're forced and figure out which one is better for your business.
Yep.
So there was a really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was an opinion piece, and it's written by this guy who's just going on about how China has their digital currency and America needs to catch up essentially with the digital dollar. And it's so interesting because it's written as if the digital dollar doesn't exist yet, or that or that the central banks haven't launched. It's really interesting. And what really just blew my mind was at the end of the article, this guy is from the Federal Reserve Board. So this guy is playing stupid. He wrote an opinion piece.
Wow.
I know it was pure propaganda, because dead ass, everybody at that level knows what's coming out. And it was just a way to soften the notice, right? To go out there to readership saying, hey, there's a new currency and this is why we need it to be able to be competitive with China. I was just laughing the whole way.
Well, and it's pretty interesting too, when you look at it, the FEDNOW is being released out of the Federal Reserve of Boston.
Mhm.
And the article that said the pilot was done for the CBDC is coming out of the Federal Reserve of New York. So tell me that if they're involved from New York and Boston on both a global coin and an American coin, tell me how the whole world's not going to be moved to digital assets next year. How is that not even going to happen? And the big banks, if you look them up, because Teresa and I are on their sites, literally every major banking institution is already involved with them, are already doing this with them. So the banks, the big boys, are already doing this with the Fed. So we say that people are going to be surprised. No, they're not. The people with money aren't surprised. The people with money are already doing it with them.
Like you look at Argentina. So in business school, we flew down and we studied, or a few of us, right? We studied in Europe and then we studied in Latin America. And we were at this Harvard extension in Argentina. And they taught us about how currency was just literally taken out of people's bank accounts. And I'm not fear mongering and I'm not suggesting that's going to happen here stateside, but I think people just don't have any clue. Like if you read a dollar, pull out a dollar bill and it says that this is a note. You are given a note. You don't own that money. So this stuff happens in history. So it's not like, but we have such short history attention spans, right? So to those lovely people who are on this call, who are watching the replay, now you know. I think what's really interesting for people who know that it's coming, I think those conversations are very interesting because we're all kind of like, all right, where are you putting your dollars?
Mm-hmm.
What does this conversion look like to you? What are you buying now? What assets are you putting this into? It's just if you're in the know, it's very interesting times. All right, Ms. Sheila, shall we go on to some of the things we think are going to happen this year that we already know are happening this year?
Heck
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, all right, let's go into this. So we have direct communication with Fannie Mae that in the next 6 to 9 months, most properties will have an appraisal waiver. So we've got that from Fannie. So the traditional appraisals that we have, a lot of them are going away. So what's taking their place? We have a couple things. We have the PDR, the PDC. We have a new universal data set being collected. So this can either be collected by the listing agent or by a third party. We're getting clarification on who can go out and collect this information. So it's going to be more critical than ever to have this information collected at the time that you have a listing going to market so that you can push through this whole desktop appraisal or appraisal waiver process. So just know that there are some small nuances that are coming very aggressively from Fannie, Freddie, the GSEs in the next 6 to 9 months. That's going to have a direct impact on our deal structure or our deal flow, how we flow through an escrow period. We know that we're going to see more inspection reports coming onto blockchain. We know that there's going to be a focus on the true cost of home ownership. So how do we use artificial intelligence to be able to say, these are the repairs that are needed to a house, this is the cost, this is the lifespan. So that's either coming from Consortia or our partners or other companies that are out there. We know that Fannie and Freddie are very interested in this information. So we're going to have to do more due diligence on our listings and on our deals as we go to closing. And it would not surprise me that in the next year or two, this becomes part of the underwriting calculation for how much home a buyer can afford. This is Consortia's, we're bringing this out massively, especially after this presentation to FedTech. People get it. So this information that we as practitioners have, this information that's stored up in different silos, we're mapping this out. We're creating that repository right now. We have huge amounts of data suppliers, home inspection, MLS, home repair companies that are coming on board to be able to share this information with capital markets. We have a process here to protect data that's coming out of the MLS. So the new way to share it is to tokenize the data and to be able to pay out the big brokerages, the independent brokerages, even the consumer who owns their own data, and then to be able to share it into the internet. We're also working on the human token, which is pretty cool because we've been asked by the state of Florida. We have other use cases, people from the US government. This is very cool, you guys, to be able to tokenize humans' data. It's a lot like a house, right? The house has data, humans have data. So we're working on this. These are some of the use cases. And then something else that we're working on is to be able to allow a consumer to own their own data, to push that out and to get paid. So instead of going to lendingtree.com and having your information sold, that the consumer could actually earn that money back directly from the people buying it. So those are just some of the things that we're working on at Consortia. I would love to open this up to questions either from Jeff or from the audience out there.
It's been pretty quiet. I would ask this question, again, this is all very overwhelming. I think for most of us, there's always one or two that seems to really understand it. What should we as individual real estate agents, let's start there, as an individual realtor, what should they be doing now to prepare or understand, or what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them, and with that general question?
I would say put your past transactions on blockchain, log yourself as the agent of record on your past transactions, and then get familiar with this certified listing process, so that when you get your listings in the spring, when you start signing them, that you know what to do, to go and do the underwriting for the asset.
And how do they go about doing that?
So everything is located on our website, Consortia, RECON SORTIA, had to slow down through that one, .com. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Thank you. And that also applies if you are a broker, in fact, probably even more so if you're a broker or have a larger database. There is opportunity in this as well. Maybe elaborate slightly on that opportunity that exists with being the one that is placing these transactions or homes in the database.
Yeah, so if you're able to tag yourself on the system and say, this is you're talking about the map, right, Jeff? Is what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a sampling of Christina's past sales. So she's putting them on here. She's able to show market dominance that she's had these transactions. So why this is becoming important, we're also building out the referral platform for tracking referrals domestically, but also globally. So if someone needs to send a referral into this area of St. Louis, they're going to obviously select Christina because she has so many red dots on the map. We're pretty pumped about this. There are a lot of use cases. This also connects people with capital markets. When capital markets has a question about 10826 Langford, they're going to reach out to Christina and they're going to say, Christina, please supply us with the documents that you have about this property. And then data suppliers, right, that have this information about properties, they also get compensated and they get to network and connect with that agent.
Awesome. I don't think I have any other questions at this time. Obviously, we're going to continue to talk about this because as I learn, honestly, as the village idiot, that every time we get back together, and sometimes it's even off camera, we just do this on a personal level. There's always something new. It's like there's no dull moments with this. And so I just think it's incredibly important for everybody listening. If this is your first time watching one of these, go back to our YouTube channel and just type in blockchain or Consortia in the search bar on LabCoatAgents and go listen to a couple of these. You don't probably have to watch all of them, but just go, kind of soak this in. Go to Consortia's website, get yourself in that ecosystem, in that spider web, if you will, and get involved, because I know it's hard to articulate and understand the impact that it's going to have now. But we can say the same thing about a lot of things in our world now, that if we only had the foresight several years ago, it probably would have changed the trajectory of our lives and our careers. And so I think this is yet another one of those things. And so just get familiar.
I love that you're our biggest fan. Thank you so much, Jeff, for having us online. Thank you for spreading the word. Super appreciate your forward thinking and your openness to new ideas.
Always. I look forward to the next time we connect. And until then, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Jeff.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.